Great to have you listening in today. As with previous seasons, it is my hope that the guests and their stories that I get to share with you this season can provide you with the tools and or insights that you need to know that you can make it through whatever is happening for you now. And not only that, that you can have the life you want in whatever way you want that to look like. So let's get to it. I'm your host, Helen Morris, and this is The Beautiful Side of Grief. When it comes to the loss of a baby, most times we hear about it from the mother's perspective. Women build communities around it, talk about it, and create opportunities to heal from it. It's very seldom, if at all, that we hear the father's perspective. What we fail to realize is that the loss of a baby affects men as well. That is taken directly from, now, let me get this right, Tsombawi Knibye.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. That's taken from his website about his book, Letting Go of Baby 2. It's his uniquely male perspective on a subject that is often deeply personal, miscarriage. It's also a subject that flies under the radar of conversation, as it's difficult to relate to unless you've become an unwilling member of this club. Research suggests, however, that between 10 and 20% of women with a medically confirmed pregnancy will end in miscarriage. So this indicates that there are an awful lot of men who have gone on this journey who no doubt are carrying around with them a lot of suppressed feelings around losing somebody they could have loved, wanted to love. So I'm excited to be having an open and candid conversation about this topic. Before I head there, let me tell you a little bit about Tsombawi. He's got his fingers into many different things. He has an apparel brand, positive mindset podcast, plus music and video production services. Through his podcast, he gets you to look at life from a different perspective, challenging your attitude and character. And he does this with conversations, interviews, and insights from industry leaders. He's also an author, youth mentor, parenting coach, songwriter, voiceover artist, and an accomplished musician. He has worked in the school education system for over a decade, working with students and their parents with after-school programs, summer camps, job fairs, behavioral and social skills programs. Fair to say he keeps himself fairly busy. The intention I'm setting for today's conversation is for us to gain an insight and awareness into how a miscarriage can affect men and how we can best support them through this process. As always, my love is winging its way to you, wrapped in rainbows and hugs today. Tsombawi, such a pleasure to have you as a guest today. Before we jump into our chat, what's your favorite instrument and why?
Oh, that's easy. My favorite instrument is the drums, and that is the instrument that I play. So I've been playing the drums since I was about 7 years old, but my mother says I was playing inside of her womb. So I guess I could say I've been playing for 41 years of my life. So I say so.
Cool. It's such a pleasure to have you here. And I have to start off this part of the conversation by telling you that I really love having men come on and share their perspectives with us. It's getting better, though. I still feel there are a lot of what men have to say on the emotional front. It gets lost in the sheer volume of women expressing themselves. We're very vocal out there, and I think that's why it's really important to have your voice added to the mix, especially around this seldom talked about topic. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you for having me, Helen. Thank you.
When you found out your wife was pregnant, were you dreaming of all those sorts of things that your mind takes you to? Like, who's this little person going to be? Is it going to be a boy? Is it going to be a girl? Do I have a preference? Am I going to be thrown ball? Did you have all those sorts of thoughts, racing around in your head?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we both did. We were both very eager to have children early in our marriage. And so we kind of picked out names for our children, from the beginning of our marriage and relationship. We talked about, how we were going to parent them, what we were going to do, what we weren't going to do. We also just, imagine, what life would be like as a family aside from us just being a husband and wife. And so, of course, there were many things that I thought about as, is it a boy? I can do these kind of things. If it's a girl, I can do these kinds of things. And so it was a very exciting time for us when we found out she was pregnant. And we were looking forward to having those moments with our child after they were born and as they continue to grow up. So.
And I think it's important to understand that, because that's a huge, big narrative you're both building up with the expectation of having this little one, join your life and enter your life. So the flip side of that is that there's an awful lot of lost hopes in there as well, and dreams and things like that. This was your first child, wasn't it? How far along was your wife when she realized things weren't going well?
She was about 14 weeks. And so what happened was I was off to work. She was at home, getting ready for work. And she felt this sharp pain just kind of like go from her shoulder down to her stomach. And she's kind of like, oh, like, what was that? I'm not really sure what that was. And she kind of let it go. And then she felt it again. And so she called her mother and said, hey, I felt this sharp pain. It went from my shoulder down to my stomach. What should I do? And her mother said, hey, you should probably possibly go to the hospital, go to your OBGYNs and just see, what's going on, just to be safe or whatever. And so that was kind of the beginning of how things began to unfold for us, because, of course, my wife had never been pregnant before. This was our first child. So you have a lot of questions. You're just kind of making sure that you are doing all that you can do and what's best for you and your unborn child, to make sure you are following the procedures and steps needed to do so, because it's your first time as a husband and as a mother. So, you're taking all those precautions. And that was kind of the beginning of what it was. And I think 14 weeks was when we, kind of that process began for us.
And you were actually on the road, weren't you, when all this was happening?
I was.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you got back, things were still pretty much at an unknown stage, weren't they?
Yeah, I was about an hour or so out on the road making deliveries at the time for the company I worked for. And my wife's, I get a call from her saying, hey, I'm headed to the hospital. I had some sharp pain in my shoulder and stomach. We're going to go get things checked out. Just letting you know what's going on. And so I'm like, okay. So I'm out on the road. And I'm like, all right, let me go ahead and just, finish my job. When I get back, I'm just going to kind of drop everything and just go to the hospital just so I can be there with her. So that way I just kind of know what's going on too, because I didn't know what was going on. Her mother did decide to go and be there with her just to be a support, so that someone was there with her and she wasn't alone by herself. And so I probably spent the next 2.5 or so hours getting done, getting back to my job, and then leaving to go to the hospital to kind of be like, hey, what's going on? What are we dealing with here? So.
And so when you got that news, what was your reaction to that?
Very shocking. That I remember my wife telling me that, people were coming in and out of the room, not really saying much to her. They were very quiet. There was a lot of noise in the beginning, because people were just kind of like, all right, let's just find out what's wrong. Let's see what's going on. Let's take some blood. Let's do this. And then all of a sudden, the room just got quiet. People were coming in, walking out. No one was talking to her. And she's like, well, what's kind of going on? Like, no one's saying anything. And so when I got there, she had told me that, they had just got finished, running some tests, seeing how things were going on. And about 10 minutes later, the doctor comes back in, and literally in his nonchalant voice, he's like, well, everything looks good, but unfortunately the baby has died. And that's kind of how it came out, and everything was fine. Everything is fine with you, your wife, but as far as the baby's concerned, the baby has passed away, died. And it was a bit of a shock, because we're like, what? Like, how is this possible? Like, what happened? What's going on? And so this kind of, the doctor says it, the nurses are there. They kind of say, hey, we'll give you guys some time. We'll come back in a few minutes. And everyone leaves the room except for her mother. And it was kind of like, It felt like, if you ever seen the show Charlie Brown, where his mother kind of talks, she's kind of like wah 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 wah. Like the doctor is talking, and all I hear is wah 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 wah. The baby has died. Oh, whoa! And so, of course, my wife, she's just heartbroken,
Yes.
and she's, she's crying, and she's not really knowing how to deal with it. And me as a husband, I'm just kind of taking it all in, just to say, like, he really, just said that. And I'm like, how could this be? How could this have happened? And so it was just shock to us, and the next, month after that, it was just a matter of us really getting back on our feet to really comprehend all that had just happened, to kind of get back to what we would call normal life.
Did you actually get any reason for why it had happened? Because I know in many instances there are no explanations. It's just, sorry, we don't understand why you lost your baby, and so you're left dealing with the unknown as well.
Yeah. For us, it was just a matter of, it could have been the umbilical cord could have strangled the baby. It could have been any reasons under the sun why it could have happened. And for me, a lot of my questions weren't really necessarily why it happened. It was more of, what did I do wrong for this to happen? And I started putting the pressure more on myself as a husband, because I'm like, as a husband and father, you're kind of the head of the household, and everything kind of flows through you, from a perspective of, mother, father, child. And I questioned why it happened, but most of my questions were, what did I do wrong? Like, why did this happen to my wife? Why did this happen to us? What have I done, in my past that has caused this to happen? I started questioning myself as a man. I questioned myself as a husband, and I questioned whether or not am I really fit to be a father if this is happening. So there were a lot of questions, and many more questions other than that, but those were kind of my initial ones. And I really started getting down on myself and questioning my manhood, and if I was capable of being a good father or being a good husband, because now I have my wife who's in this situation. And the bottom line for me is, I can't fix this.
Yeah.
and that was the main thing. I'm like, I can't fix this. And as a man, as men, we're created to conquer. We're always conquering something. Whether you're trying to, hey, I like that girl, I'm gonna go conquer that. Or, hey, I got this job interview, I'm gonna conquer this. Or, we've got this money problem, I'm gonna conquer this. It's just all about us conquering. And at this moment in time, I'm feeling helpless. I cannot, number one, change or fix what happened. I can't, number two, help my wife to feel any better about what's happened. And number three, I'm now questioning myself as a man as to who I am. So I have all these emotions and feelings that are happening all at one time, while at the same time trying to be strong for her and be her rock while all this is going on.
Can I ask you what age you were when this happened?
I was 27. Well, me and my wife were both 27 at the time when this
27,
happened.
right.
So this happened in 2008. So we were 26, 27 years old, and about the first year and a half or so of our marriage. So we were very young, just got married not too long ago, about a year and a half, and we got into this. And so we are very new to the whole pregnancy process. And then this happens, and we're kind of like, wait a minute, like, this just came out of nowhere. Like, how do we deal with this situation as a young married couple who are very ambitious about having children?
See, what you've just described really, really surprises me from a woman's perspective, because I had no idea. Like, I know guys like to fix it, they like to be in control of things like that, but I had no idea that it would be impacting your manhood or the sense of who you are as a provider, as a protector. the way it did. And is that something that you've found when you've been talking to other men, that they felt a similar thing as well?
It's interesting you say that because a lot of men do not talk about this. It
Yeah.
actually, to me, what I found is it's a very sensitive and vulnerable subject for men to
Yes.
talk about. Because as men, from a general standpoint, we are groomed to be, you're tough, you take it, you deal with it, and you move on. But then in doing all that, if you never actually acknowledge it or never actually talk about it and deal with it in a way where it becomes healing to us, it becomes hurtful to us. And so what I started finding out is that men, in most cases, down the line in your life, what happens is things in our lives that hurt us, that we don't talk about and deal with, they come back up later in life in different ways where now you've got all this stuff bottled down. And I liken it to a soda bottle or a soda can. If you shake a soda bottle or a soda can up enough, and not even much, but you shake it up enough and you open it, it's spewing out over everything and over
Yeah.
everybody. And that's how men are. Like eventually, if we don't deal with those emotions and feelings we have, eventually we're going to blow up on somebody or something at the wrong place, wrong time, the wrong people who have nothing to do with how you're feeling at that moment because you've had all this past stuff just brushed under the rug and compacted that now it's erupting to the surface. And now you have an even bigger problem because now you don't even know why you feel like this because
Yes.
something in your past you've never dealt with that has now come to the surface and you never dealt with it. And this is why one of the things that prompted me just to write the book is because I wanted to help other men talk about it, and not just
Yeah.
talk about it, but heal from it and then be able to move on from it. You may not ever forget, but you do need to move on as well.
Yes, such an important point because it's not about forgetting. It's about understanding and accepting what has happened and being able to put that in a place where you can still carry on with your life because unfortunately life goes on and you don't have any choice but to move with it. So, how did you go about dealing with these emotions that you were experiencing, the fallout from all of this? Did you, first of all, did you share it with your wife that you were feeling that way? And secondly, what did you do about it?
That's an excellent question because initially I did not share with her how I felt about it. Because my thing was, okay, she's the one who is taking this the hardest. I need to do all that I can to be strong for her. So that way I can help her, get through this as best I can. And so initially I didn't talk to her about it, but I think as I got to the point of where I wanted to write the book, I started sharing things with her. And as the book came about, I started asking her a few more questions because she actually wrote her book first and then I
Mm-hmm.
wrote mine. And so I wanted to make sure, look, I don't want my book to sound like yours. I want to get just some details. So that way my book at least has some correlation. Because look, as men, we're
Yeah.
not very detail oriented. You know what I mean? So, but I did want to make sure that the time frames and all that, match. And I'm like, I can be a detailed guy, but I also know that in this book, I'm like, look, I'm talking to men. Most men, they want to get to the
Yeah.
main course of it and see. But I'm like, at the same time, we can do that. We also got to have some talks in this book about emotions and feelings and how to get through, what we're dealing with, because that's the main focal point of the book. And so for me personally, my father-in-law, my father, were very instrumental in my healing part of it. My former pastor at the time was as well. And then just actually, honestly, just praying and being able to talk to the Heavenly Father about it. And I don't know how many of you here maybe have faith or religion or Christianity, but that's who I pray to and that's who I live for. And so that's what I did. It was rough and tough to do because now you have this other side of life that's happened and you hear about it, but you don't ever think it's going to happen to you. And then when it does happen, you're like, okay, this is not what I was expecting. Why did this happen to us? And then my questions also weren't just about, me and my manhood. My questions really were about my Heavenly Father. And I'm like, hey, like, what's up with you? Like, why did you allow this to happen to us? Like, what's wrong with us? What did we do? Like, tell me, show me, And so there's not always a clear cut answer to that. It's just, I've always said to other people that sometimes things happen in your own life to help somebody else who's coming behind you, to help them either deal with and go through it, or to help them to avoid it altogether.
Oh, I love that, because it resonates really strongly with me, because in one of your Instagram posts, you wrote, "The Messiah doesn't promise to answer all of our prayers the way we expect, but he promises to reveal hidden treasure in the dark." And that's what you're talking about, isn't it? It's about going through these experiences. We don't always understand why they're happening to us. They're pretty rough at the time, difficult to make sense of. Yet, when we get to the flip side of them, we can actually see that actually they've just cleared the way, for somebody else coming in behind us, for us to be able to move forward, or to have a greater understanding of ourselves and who we are.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have had my share of ups and downs in life. I was sharing with my current church family that we now attend, and I was talking to them just about, our pastor had talked about, what if the worst things in our lives were the best things that ever happened to us? And in doing that, I've been teaching, on tithing at my church, and I had said, hey, let me tell you guys just about the worst thing that's happened, to me and my wife. And I started talking about baby loss. And the thing is that it didn't happen just once. It happened twice. 2 years in a row. 2 years in a row it happened for us. So this was not like a one-time thing. It happened again. And so I said, look, at the time, I didn't understand why this was happening and why things were going the way it was going. But I said, if I hadn't had a firm foundation to rely on it, and a firm foundation from others to rely on, I'm like, I don't know what our marriage would have been like, because this happens in people's marriages, and it can either bring you closer to each other or it could tear you apart.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Conversations about it. Yeah, you have to talk. You have to communicate. And it may not be initially, like, it may have to be, okay, this has happened. We have our mourning time, or we have our time of grief, or however it is, or whatever it is that happens. Like, you have to eventually talk about it, because if not, it can and or will destroy your relationship. And communication, as we know, is key to any and all relationships.
100%. So, on the heels of that, you said right at the outset, when you were newly married, that you knew that you wanted to have this big family, and that was the big picture. So you go through one miscarriage, and then there must have been the fear of, is it going to happen again? And then it happens again. So let's talk about the fears that arise from those types of situations, and how you get through those.
Yeah. So that's, I do a lot of, positive mindset stuff that I do, and with my, coaching with youth and parents, and just in general. And so, and I say positive mindset, but I like to say that, you can have a positive mindset all you like, and that's great. But, I also like to compound it with having the mindset of our Creator, because that's the ultimate mindset we want to have. And so there was a lot of negative thoughts that I had after the first, baby loss. And as much as I personally wanted to change those thoughts into positive ones, I was just kind of in a neutral area where it's like, all right, well, if this happens again, how would I react? Or will it happen again? And if it does happen again, like, am I able to handle it? Can I deal with it? And so both me and my wife are just like, let's just, you know, continue on and just kind of see what happens. But I think in the back of our minds, it was always, what if it happens again? And when it did happen again, it's kind of like, all right, the second time it happened, and I'll be honest, and you can read this in the book in the full details. The second time it happened, we didn't realize how serious it was for my wife when it happened the second time, because for her, we found out that there was a life and death situation that could have occurred for her in the second one. And so that was a saving grace all in itself. And so we're like, okay, we're upset this happened. But in all honesty, I could have lost both a child and my spouse. And that I'm not sure I could have recovered from quickly or recover from at all. And that's just being humanly honest. We have to, and honesty is something we have to be honest about those things, because would I have recovered? It's highly possible. But I don't know that, because I'm like, is that something that I can handle? Our Creator, he puts on us what he knows that we can bear. And so evidently for us, he knew that we could bear this. We didn't know that at the time, but now we're able to share with others who are going through it, those who may end up going through it, and those who already have gone through it, who have not dealt with it in a way that's been positively healing and restorative for them. And so that second time, it just was like, all right, here we go again. And it's kind of like deja vu. It's kind of like, well, the first one's kind of like, it's here again. It's like it never really ended. It's kind of like a continuation of the first one. And so it just became almost routine, if you want to say. It's kind of, I was like, well, here we are again. It's like, well, how many times is this going to happen? And like I said, it has to be a mindset change or a mindset shift, because if you are, and I don't mean to make this a whole, spiritual, talk, but if you're going to be a follower of the Messiah, you got to take on his mindset, and to take on that mindset, you have to surround yourself with people who are going to encourage you, allow you to grieve, and allow you to have that time of bereavement. But then after a while, say, okay, you've been here long enough. It's time to get back up. And not let you allow you to stay there and wallow. Well, for say, in your depression, or wallow in your weeping and whatnot. And so that's how it happened for us for second time. So it's just a matter of, we got to shift our mindset to think more positively. And then when we think that way, we can now begin to speak that way. And when we speak that way, we can now begin to act that way.
Yes, such good information. So let's talk about men and fathers dealing with emotional pain, because again, we know that a lot of men don't like to talk about it. They don't like to know even how to express what they're feeling inside of them to have those conversations. So what are your top pieces of advice that you would give somebody about being able to share what they're feeling and open up, and the value of that?
Well, especially as a man, I would say that you need to find someone, whether it's one person or it's two or three people, that you can honestly confide in, and that will allow you to speak freely about how it is you're feeling. And that one person or two or three people, they're not being judgmental, they're not putting you down, and they're not making you feel less of a man because you feel that way. Because if we're being 100% honest, all men feel that way about something or someone at any given time in their lives. Yes. And so we're all human beings, whether you're a man, woman, or child. And the feelings that and emotions that we have, they were all given to us. And so we are to express them, but to express them in a healthy way. express them in a healthy way. And for men, we normally express our emotions and feelings in a non-healthy way. We express it in anger. We
Yes.
express it by, going to the gym, lifting weights, which is fine. You can do that. But then we'll also express it in a way that may cause us to do things that are detrimental to us and those attached to us, such as possibly drinking or doing drugs or just doing things that are just negative to our bodies, negative to our minds, negative to those who are attached to us, whether it's our children, our wife, our spouse, our parents, our brothers, whoever, friends, coworkers. And so you need to find someone you can confide in and talk to that is going to allow you to express those feelings and allow you to be that vulnerable or sensitive man you need to be in that moment, but then also be able to have that same person help you get up out of that, to say, okay, we've been here long enough. Now it's time for us to get back on the horse and start riding again, And at the same time, if you cannot find someone to confide in who is a friend or a brother or whoever, you might want to find help. And when I say help, I mean professional help, meaning someone that can help you professionally. Because now what's going to happen is you don't want this to carry on so long in your life that when you do possibly explode later, it doesn't come out in a way that now it's a much deeper issue than you just getting help. It's just like, hey, there's something really wrong with him. And so those are my two really ones you want to confide in someone that's going to let you be vulnerable and talk about that and be sensitive, but also helps you get up out of it. And if you can't find that person or two or three people, get professional help, because you don't want that to linger on, because that will be anything. I'll say this, besides a woman, a man's emotions and feelings can be his downfall.
Yes. Allowing yourself to become vulnerable. Yeah, that's a big thing with the identity you have of yourself, especially as a man, isn't it? And I think it's in that vulnerability that actually that can change your life forever going forward, because the lessons you learn from sharing your emotions and allowing yourself to actually feel deeply what it is you've experienced is a really, really healthy thing, but it's not often encouraged. And that's why so many men tend to damper it down or ignore it and like that. What is your book going to give men, or in fact, anyone who picks it up to read it?
Well, I strongly believe that my book's going to help men to deal with, heal from, and be free from hurts in life. And so my book is an open book to me of how I felt and dealt with these situations in my life with me and my wife. And yes, we are one because we're married, but we do have our individualities that we have when it comes to dealing with certain things in life. My wife has a way of dealing with things because she's a female. And as a male, I have a way I deal with things, but then we also have that time we come together and we have to deal with it together because we are one. Scripture says that that a man will cleave to his wife and they become one. We're one flesh. And so we may grieve separately, but we also have to, and we may even communicate separately. I may have a person I confide in. She has the one she confides in. But then eventually we need to come together and we need to grieve together and we need to confide and talk and communicate with each other. And so I think strongly believe that my book will allow men to see that it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to have those emotions. It's okay to be vulnerable and sensitive. My father, who has always been one of my mentors and my hero, taught me that a man should be both vulnerable and sensitive, but also strong and courageous. And so you have to find the quote unquote balance between the two when it's time to be one or the other. Because if you're strong and courageous in a time where you should be sensitive and vulnerable, that's just the wrong place to be in. And if you're sensitive and vulnerable in a time where you should be strong and courageous, again, You have to make sure you put them in the right, perspective and in the right places. And so as men, we're just taught that, hey, you're the man. You need to be strong, courageous, deal with it, and you got it. A lot of us as men, we be like, look, I got it. I got this. And yeah, you do. But to a degree, like when it's all said and done, ask for help.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with asking for help. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. So if you don't get anything else out of my book, know that you can ask for help.
Oh, that's powerful. And you had a great mentor in your dad giving you that piece of advice. Man, that is very, very, just how you described it. It's knowing that you can be both. And that's a key to it, isn't it? It's the balance of our vulnerability with our strength. And once you understand that, that will put you in good stead for whatever you face in your life. How have these experiences with miscarriage changed your perception on life? Or has it at all? But I think it has.
Oh, definitely has. It just goes to show that the worst thing that you can pinpoint in your life that's happened, as my pastor spoke about a couple of weeks ago, that it could be the best thing that could happen to you. And I can explain just reason why, because some of you are saying, well, how are you telling me the worst thing in my life could be the best thing that ever happened to me? Well, let's look at this, is that, all of us make mistakes in life. All of us go through trials in life and tribulations, right? And so if life was always predictable, if life was always, a bed of roses and a field of dreams, we would never actually get any stronger. But when you have those trials and tribulations that we go through, it allows us to get stronger, because mistakes and mishaps happen for us to learn from them. Mm-hmm. And if you're not learning from them, what's the point of having mistakes and mishaps? So we have to learn from them to gain strength to go back and say, okay, this happened and I did it this way. It didn't go right. So maybe I need to kind of change something. It's always about strategizing and making things better in life. That makes the brain grow. It's like a child who says, I don't like math. Okay. But you got to learn how to do it, because life's about math. You got to figure out how to deal with money. You got to figure out how you're going to deal with, measuring things, and how, it's all, math is everywhere. It's all around us. Any other subject, science or reading, like, you have to figure out how to deal with these things, because they are a part of your life once you become an adult. It's an everyday thing. And so it's not like we're going out looking for, let me find the worst thing that can happen to me. Like, no, you're not going to look for it. Like, life happens. But you also have to look at it and say, okay, how do I look at this from a perspective that shows the bright side of it? You may not find it at first. You're going to be upset. You're going to be angry. You're going to be mad. You may even decide that you want to walk away from something. That could happen. But again, you need to be able to understand that the trials that we go through in life are there to strengthen us, not to weaken us. They're to strengthen us, not to weaken us, so that we can become stronger, not just for ourselves, but for somebody else. And that somebody else could be your spouse, your children, your coworkers, a friend, or a complete stranger you never met before. That because of your conversation with them, they decided, you know what? I'm going to change my course of life, and I'm going to become a better person and do better things and make better decisions, because there was someone who talked to me who's been there and done that. And now they're willing to help me to either not make the mistakes they made or help me get through the ones that I'm going through, because they've been through them already.
Gosh, that's such a good note to finish up on. To remember not to take life personally. We often take all these things personally when, in fact, like you say, they are all experiences that we can learn and grow from. So that's incredible. I always finish up with a couple of questions. So the first one is, what is the best thing that has happened to you so far today?
Ooh, so far today. Oh, you know what? I will be honest.
Okay.
Being with you today, Helen, has been the best thing that's happened to me today.
Really?
Yes, because I enjoy doing things like this because it allows me to reach an audience I may not ever reach because of just the fact that this is how our world is. You know, me and you were worlds apart,
Yes.
and so you're in, New Zealand, I'm in America, and we're having this conversation now, but there's an audience that you have that I may never reach. And so now I'm able to kind of share. We're having a conversation around something that involves everyone. It's grief in general. And it may not be grief in this way, but all of us experience grief one way or another.
Yes.
And so I was just, I was excited to come and do this today. And up to this point of my day, this has been the best part of my day thus far.
Wow, thank you for that. And I feel the same. It's such a buzz I get whenever I get to share somebody else's story. I feel that is such a privilege, and you've just made my day because I'm always come off a high when I finish an interview with somebody. It's just like I've just gone, yes. Yes,
Awesome.
I've just learned a whole lot of new information that perhaps I didn't realize before. So, my next question is, what are you most grateful for?
I am most grateful for my family, my wife, my son, my daughter. And initially, we sat down and talked, and my wife wanted to have 5 children. I wanted to have 3. And then we said, okay, well, we'll meet in the middle. We'll do 4. And after my daughter was born, she's like, let me think about it. And see. And
Yeah.
the funny thing is that when we did talk about this at times before, it's like we're like, you know what? We said we were going to meet in the middle and have 4. She's like, it's interesting. I was pregnant 4 times. I said, we lost 2
Yes.
and we got 2. And I was like, that's really interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm grateful for my family. I all that I do is for them. And I'm just grateful to the Messiah that he's given me the capabilities as he strengthens me to just continue to become all that I can be under his strength for him and for my family. So I'm grateful for my family.
Ah, best answer. Best answer. And what's your go-to when you have moments in your day that are turning to custard, not going so well? How do you pivot out of those?
I have several things that I do, but I think my top thing is that I think of a song that helps me think of my Heavenly Father. That allows me to be like, all right, this is not going how I want. It's not going well. Because there was a time where I would get upset and I get mad. I'm like, this is just not working out, and this is like And over the past, I would say, year and a half, I've gotten into a place where I'm like, you know what? I'm like, if this is meant to happen, then there's nothing I can do about it. I just have to deal with it, learn from it, understand it. And it's not going to always happen that way, but I can definitely say that I have gotten better with rolling with the punches of life because,
Yes.
again, life happens. And so I just find a song that reminds me of his goodness and his mercy. And also understand, like, hey, my family needs me. I'm like, if I'm not here, then I can't do what needs to be done. And so I think I always tell people that my life is my business and my business is my life because my family is tied to everything that I do. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's really good. how can people reach out, get hold of you? They want to get hold of your book and things like that. We're going to have the links in the episode notes, but I always think it's good just to hear it straight from you, how they can get hold of you.
Yeah, so they can get a hold of me at Tsombawi.com. We'll put that in the notes, so I'm sure you guys can know how to spell that correctly. Tsombawi.com. If you want to get the books, you can find them there as well. You'll find both my book, my wife's book, and the book that my wife and her best friend, who is a counselor, wrote after her book. Is called What's Next? A Guide to Dealing with Grief After a Loss. And in that book is the 5 stages of grief in that book. So you can find that on my website. You can also find it on Amazon as well. But what you cannot find on Amazon is the package of all 3 books together. So if you want to get all 3 books together, you have to go to Tsombawi.com and get that. So all 3 books together, you can read them in any order you like, or you can buy them separately. But if you want the whole package, you can only find that on my website. And so you can get me there. You can find me on social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter, but I'm not really there too much. And LinkedIn as well. So you guys can find me there as well. Any other place, it just, if you reach out to me by email from my website or social media, that's where you can find me.
Tsombawi, wow. Thank you for sharing all that information. And I downloaded your book last night, so I'm excited to read it. And I apologize I didn't have the chance to read it beforehand, before we got to talk. But, I don't think it made any difference, because I think that, how the way you answered these questions that I've given you today, there was so much packed into those answers. And I'm truly, truly grateful for you sharing with us an insight into how men think and react, and what's important to you, and how they can deal with this. And so any parting of comments that you would like to leave our listeners with today?
Sure. This is just be for everyone, not just men, but for everyone, women, men, possibly even children. Is that cherish each other, and love each other, and spend as much time as you can with each other. And I'm not saying that as to say that something's going to happen, that's going to be, tragic, but, our Creator put them here for a reason, and He put you all together as a family for a reason. And the word family, in my opinion, in today's world is starting to get watered down. And I would like to leave with your listeners that, continue to love each other, continue to care for each other, continue to understand that everything in all moments are important, especially us as parents when we have children. My son just turned 13 last week, and I'm kind of like, all right, to a degree, time's not running out, but from the time he was born to age 13, I'm like, man, where did those years go? Like, there's a lot of stuff in those years. And one thing that I have always done, I've done my extreme best not to let my job or career or profession get in the way of spending time with my family. And you have to also understand there's time to spend with your children, there's time to spend with your spouse, and then there's time to spend together. And you have to make sure you spend time, whether it's 15 minutes or it's 5 hours, like whatever it is, like take time out to spend time with your family, your children, your spouse, because that's highly important. That's where, me personally, I get my motivation and inspiration from, because, like I said, everything that I do is tied to them. So be family oriented, be family minded, and love each other, spend time together.
Beautiful parting comment. And again, resonates with me so strongly. I spent so much time with my daughter, and I have absolutely no regrets. I went on the school camps, I went on the sports trips, and I sometimes missed lunch so that I could go and see something at school because that's what was important to me. And so when she left, I felt that I did my very best that I could for her as her mum, and that left me feeling proud. So it's always a good thing. And you never know what's around the corner, is always my saying. So thank you very, very much, Tsombawi, for your time today and for all the beautiful insights that you've shared.
Well, thank you, Helen, for having me and your audience. And we can do it again sometime. And I look forward to it.
Thanks for listening. I hope you got some real value from this episode. Let me know how I'm doing, or if there's a topic you'd like covered, by clicking on the Healing to Be You Gmail link or going to the Healing to Be You website. To get notified of new episodes, hit the subscribe button and please share if you know of someone who could benefit from this episode. Until next time, be kind to you and take good care.